Greetings, Guardians. My name is Bife here. So I have a question. What's the better option? Diplomacy or action? Back in the day, a Cabal would have laughed at that question as they crushed their foes beneath the iron treads of their tanks. Tanks which of course are the size of skyscrapers. Nowadays, though, things have changed. Keitel, the Empress of the Cabal remnants, is not your typical Cabal, and she's in charge now. Her keen eye for how diplomacy, culture, strategies, and alliances all intersect makes her a formidable adversary because she sees the bigger picture beyond the combat of the moment. At least, most of the time she does. Sometimes the decisions presented to us are relatively simple. The Cabal's war with the Hive in a microcosm might represent such a decision. Xivu Arath's forces are too strong, so Keitel sought to strengthen her own before reprisals against the Hive would begin in earnest. However, sometimes a situation arises that requires absolute secrecy and requires the consent of an ally before such dramatic action can be undertaken. The lore from the new Nightfall rocket launcher, the Hothead, which is actually returning from Destiny 1, is remarkable because it tells us of a situation exactly like that. And it's a situation that could well have boiled over to change the political makeup of the entire system and would have been tantamount to genocide. So, dark story ahead. First though, I wanted to go ahead and talk for a moment about the sponsor for this video, Keeps. I once heard that the Fallen were afraid of Saint 14, but then they saw how much hair he had left. Sadly, Saint left it a little too late to using Keeps and was only able to save his mohawk.
You just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just...
Not so intimidating now. Until he does the whole headbutting thing, of course. With Keeps, however, you can keep your full head of hair, and keep your space husband happy at the same time. Keeps is, for me at least, a really easy sponsorship to take because one of my rules is that a sponsorship on this channel should at least be relevant to all of the people watching it, and with about 95% of the viewership on this channel being male, it makes sense to talk about Keeps because 2/3 of us will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time we're 35. The best way to prevent this is to do something about it whilst you still have hair left. With Keeps, you can get your treatment delivered to you at home after a licensed doctor has reviewed your information and recommended which of their plans you should take. It's all done online and it's incredibly easy, allowing you to get those products shipped to your door every 3 months. When looking at hair loss, you've got to think about the long-term battle because hair loss is something that you'll be fighting your whole life. So get started now and act to save your hair. Beyond that, if you have any concerns, you can message your Keeps doctor 24/7 and ask whatever you want, and can even use the Keeps progress tracking tool to see how your treatment is progressing. Thanks again to Keeps for sponsoring this video, and remember that you can get 50% off your order of Keeps hair loss treatment at keeps.com/bife. That's keeps.com/BYF. Thanks again to Keeps for sponsoring this video, and yeah, back to the content. Currently, there is an alliance that might well be formed between the Cabal, Awoken Humanity, and Eliksni, but for that to occur, all the players need to come to the table. Whilst the Awoken and Eliksni, at least of the House of Light and of the Reef, have strong allied ties to humanity, the relationship with the Cabal is, at best, in a somewhat frosty, strained state on the face of things. This is the result of the Cabal's continuous warmongering ways. Keitel might be defying that norm, but the spectre of the Scout Legions and Gaul's Red Legion still looms large in the minds of those who have suffered at their hands. The Eliksni may have threatened the walls of the city many a time before, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they loom as large in the minds of the citizens of humanity as the Cabal do now. After all, the Eliksni never conquered the last city. Gaul did, and his Red Legion left many of its citizens scarred in more ways than one. This leads us to a moment that could be considered some of the most careful and deadly diplomacy in the entire history of Sol, or some of the most foolish diplomacy in the entire system's history. I'll explain why when we're all up to date, but again, this comes from the lore tab of the Hothead, and it reads as follows. Zavala swung off his sparrow in a rocky gulch near the EDZ. Across the wash, a Cabal legionary leaned next to a small shuttle. A scion stood at attention nearby. "You Zavala?" the legionary called. Zavala tried not to feel slighted. "I am Commander Zavala," he answered. The legionary squinted and nodded slowly. "Had to make sure," it said. "Security stuff." "Let's do this quick." The legionary pointed a fat finger at the scion. "This scion's gonna ask you a question. Then you tell me your answer. I go tell Empress Keitel, and that's all." "What kind of question?" Zavala asked. The legionary shrugged. "Only the scion and Empress Keitel know. Safest that way." Zavala warily approached the scion. As it stared into him with its single eye, Zavala felt his ears ring. His hand went to his sidearm, but a vision sprang to his mind, vivid and fully formed. Zavala saw the dreaming city. He saw the Cabal ships filling the sky, spewing oily smoke. Then, an explosion. A sea of explosions, violent red and black with the fury of planet killers, unmakers, but concentrated, refined, perfect for the size of the task at hand. He saw death for all in the dreaming city, bodies face down in the crystal grit of their palace. Mara Sov, Petrovenge, Corsairs, countless awoken. Collateral. For at the bottom of a crater was the shattered body of a crystal-bound hive god, destroyed at her most vulnerable moment, her trickery silenced forever. Then a war, yes, probably, but a small one. And behind it, blood on two pairs of hands, too willing to pay the price for peace. "No!" Zavala broke the scion's gaze, and the vision stopped abruptly. The legionary grunted. "That's your official answer?" Zavala straightened. "My answer is no," he said clearly. The legionary nodded. "Fair enough," it said, and took a half step back from the scion. The scion punched a code into a small wrist-mounted screen. There was a brief chime, a muffled pop, and the scion slumped to the ground, blood pouring from a wound in its head. Zavala reached for his weapon again, but the legionary laughed and held up a hand. "The volunteers knew that's part of the deal. Now nobody knows what the question was except for you and the Empress. Safest that way. Gotta go and tell her your answer." The Cabal called as it climbed into the shuttle. "Hope you made the right choice." The craft chugged into the sky, its jets spattering Zavala's boots with the scion's blood. So first of all, hats off to Zavala for preventing a genocide that only a cruel, unwavering calculus like that of Keitel's might have even considered. And yet, when the prize of such an action would be the potential death of the Witch Queen Savathun, such a proposal is one that should be considered at best, even if it is something terrible, and something that clearly one would reject. Clearly, though, Keitel's intelligence was unlikely to be well-founded, as whilst she was likely to know about Savathun's containment, she was unlikely to have been informed as to its strength. I doubt that mere causal weapons would be capable of something so monumental as the destruction of the Witch Queen inside her cocoon. Although, maybe this was meant to be at the point when the cocoon was dropped and the Witch Queen was vulnerable. It's not clear at all. Aside from anything else though, if this wasn't the case, and if Keitel did believe that she could just detonate a bomb on top of the Witch Queen, maybe this points to a tactical blunder, and a significant hole in Keitel's intelligence network within the Awoken of the Reef. Of course, this would be beyond the simple reasons of a tactical blunder for killing the potential ally in the form of the Awoken. If this action was undertaken, there is also a further distressing possibility, which is that it would likely divert Shivua Wrath's forces away from Savathun, and they instead might refocus their attacks on the Cabal, thus weakening Keitel's position further. No matter how you look at this seems like it was a bad idea, but one that Keitel wanted to consider. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, as the saying goes, or at least is a distraction for the time being, and both Mara and Keitel have coexisted by this philosophy so far. Mara even believes that in time these two will see eye to eye. Take a listen to this quote from Mara and her discussion with Ikora.
"Taken, Scorn, the Hive, our true enemies aligned to a spearhead to halt our rescues of the Techians.
No mention of House Salvation or the Cabal?
House Salvation is in ruins. You saw to that. As for the Cabal, I am not worried about Empress Keitel. She and I will see eye to eye one day. But Callus...
I agree. Callus is a problem. We should discuss what the Vanguard found aboard the Glykon. In private.
As a quick note, we will discuss that Callus topic in a later video because that is fascinating, and it is something that I really wonder if Mara was fully informed on, or whether we do know the full story. Something that we need to really think about and discover more on. To return to the topic at hand though, this point of diplomacy is a cold act of tactical genius by Keitel if all has gone according to her plans. It means that only her and Zavala would ever have known that this act of diplomacy even happened. But maybe it didn't work out quite that way, and I'll explain why in a second. You see, if this had worked, her and Zavala and the one Scion that died delivering this vision actually know that this was a plan that Keitel was willing to contemplate, and the fact that she shared it with Zavala in this way perhaps means that the Cabal can come in from the cold. You see, if the Reef is also humanity's valued ally, then perhaps Keitel will observe their strengths in time and see the merit of a union between all their forces. By telling Keitel not to attack the Awoken, Zavala has moved all our forces one step closer to uniting, even if the choice, be it a split-second one, was an easy one for him to make with his stern moral compass. Of course, it also saved countless innocent lives in the Dreaming City and the priceless Awoken artifacts of power that could help us in the coming war against the darkness. But of course, I'm not mentioning all the obvious stuff here. Now, there is also a reason why this might not have been such a good idea, and that comes from the old saying that 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. The third person in this instance, it was the Scion. And there's good reason not to trust the Scions nowadays. A sect of Scions in the Season of the Chosen were literally the antagonists, and I don't know if it's entirely clear if Keitel can actually still trust them. We know that the Scion Conclave, which tried to kill Zavala as vengeance for the destruction of the Almighty and the death of Amtek's sisters at the Sundial, has actively looked to combat Keitel's efforts at diplomacy before and has worked to undermine her. Now, the Scion there might be dead, but you've got to understand that when psionics are involved, information could have been non-verbally passed to a third party in all of this. And if that is the case, well, maybe the Scion passed it on to other members of the Conclave if it was indeed a member of it. Let's hope that that wasn't the case, because I think it might possibly be information like this that could start a war between the Awoken and Keitel's Cabal, a war that nobody can afford to fight right now. If this does happen, someone is going to learn about it eventually. And when that secret breaks, Keitel is going to have a diplomatic hell break upon her, and she might even have to deal with Mara Sov's quite infamous wrath. It sounds strange when you take a look at the Cabal versus the Awoken and compare the martial strength of one to the strength of the other, but I would not bet on the Cabal in a fight against the Awoken. Mara has dealt with and destroyed far more powerful forces than Keitel. She destroyed an entire hive fleet with the Harbingers back in the Taken King, and that may have drained her of energy for a moment, but she was able to do that, practically speaking, with one incantation. This, of course, is also not to discount the skilled forces of the Corsairs and the Royal Guards, the Paladins of the Awoken, the various forces that will come to fight for Mara's side. And then, of course, if we were asked to choose a side in all of this, inevitably, we would have to side with our long-found allies, the Awoken. Keitel and us have an armistice, it's true, but the Awoken and the Guardian have been allies since our fight against the Taken King, since our fight against the House of Wolves, and cooperation with the Awoken has even gone back as far as the Reef Wars and the Battle of the Twilight Gap, where Mara ultimately chose to engage the House of Wolves, thus sparing the city. So, yeah, this would be a terrible thing if it got out, and if someone else learned of it. A powerful secret to be kept. So let's just hope that Zavala and Keitel truly are the only 2 who know about it. And for the time being, let's hope it doesn't all come to pass, that this next war would break out. The Awoken and the Cabal are powerful potential allies in our fight against the darkness. We need their cooperation, or everyone might be in trouble. But that's all from me for now. If you enjoyed the video, please go ahead and let me know, and of course, if you want more Destiny content, hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section. I'd like to think that it's all fairly cut and dry what we would all choose and that we'd all say no to Keitel's particular answer. But by that same token, I want to know, do you think the Scion might have passed the information on? Do you think that the Conclave might have got a hold of this information too? If so, what do you think they'll do with it? What do you think that their plan might be? Let me know down below in the comments section. But as per usual, know that your viewership is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Horodacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.